So basically, this is what we're gonna do. I recorded the footage yesterday, which I think is pretty action-packed, and there's a lot of spots. There are some spots which I don't think I played well, and then other spots where uh, I think I made some okay plays. So basically, like it's not only about like reviewing sessions and when you feel like you're playing your best. It's always try to find like, okay, what mistakes did I do? How can I get better? That type of stuff. So I'm just gonna share my screen first of all to see, because I mean 200 Zoom has been one of my main games before this year. I've been playing a lot more mid stakes rate tables, so the volume has been down. But I'm just gonna share my screen. So here, I mean, I called in the big blind, E open, check back the flop, and then bet spot on the turn. I think it's a pretty easy fold. Here, E three bet pre-flop goes with a really, really small sizing, which I'm not a big fan of, but that's what E does. So, I mean, we can't do anything but call. Turn ace. Obviously, we're not doing anything. He's pretty tight overall so far in the sample, so we're just we're not looking to start bluffing him. Yeah. In this spot here, I was gonna fold to the three bet, but since he cold called here, I mean we have a pretty we had a pretty disguised hand, and then if we hit a big hand, we potentially have some implied odds. If it were just against this guy, which is an okay reg, and we're out of position, it's just a pretty easy fold there. Okay, I think here we cannot do anything else but just check fold. I think that's pretty obvious. He bets big into a fish. I mean, his range should be fairly strong to do that. Yeah. Okay, so here, guys, this is an interesting spot. So basically, we open under the gun. We get a cold called from like a loose-ish kind of tight guy on the button. So then again, we should need to start taking a look into how wide he's cold call. So if he's cold calling pretty wide, like 20%, where if he starts cold calling pretty wide, like 20, 25%, something like that, then we need to have like a c betting range on favorable board texture. So basically on this board, even if he has a wide range, it's like it's a pretty bad board for us being out of position. So basically we're just gonna check our entire range. So I mean the decision on this flop was pretty easy because I mean the board is pretty bad. So I didn't really take we don't really need to take into account like if he's tight or if he's wide. I mean it's just a super bad board. We're just gonna check our entire range here. Once he bets half pot, now our decision is we're gonna have like a pretty aggressive check raising strategy. I mean our range is pretty uncapped. So basically we're going to start with the pocket pairs that needs the most protection. So hands like pocket nines, pocket tens, pocket jacks, pocket queens, we can always check raise. Then we're going to have some sets as well, straights, that type of stuff. As far as merger type of hands, so like if we ever want to raise some 8x, I would always raise basically this combo. Like we have a gut shot, we have some backdoor flush draw. So this combo is much better to check raise than let's say a 10-8, for example, if we had that. So basically, if we're ever looking to check raise these type of hands, you know, like the pocket nines, pocket tens, or some mergier like top pair type of hand, we're looking to do some checking on the turn. That's I mean in our general game plan. So basically this is how I would build my strategy, and also like I would try to like check raise like some hands like a6, a7 backdoor flush draw, that type of stuff, you know, like, or yeah, I mean we don't really have just bottom pair. I mean we can check raise a hand like yeah, usually we use some bottom pair type of hands, but then here we could use some hands like 8-7, 5-6, a spade, that type of stuff to actually check raise. And yeah. So yeah, so I mean here I decided to check raise, like I mentioned. Here, I mean I'm just checking it down. there's nothing I can do. Now, my plan was to I mean, check raise, check turn. Now we hit a pretty nice hand. I don't expect this guy. Like if I was playing against a solid regular, I would definitely just check this as it's my probably like my weakest 8x. So like if I were ever to raise another 8x, it would be something like ace 8 of spade or something like that. So basically this would be a potentially a nice check call hand, but I don't expect this guy which is playing like 29-12 1.4 aggression fight, like he has a high went to showdown and doesn't really 3-bet. So basically what happens here is that he's still gonna have hands like pocket nines, pocket tens, pocket jacks in his range, which I don't think are gonna stab the turn there. So I decided that like I would prefer putting my money in myself, because I mean he's a weaker player and I didn't expect him to bet that turn fairly often. But like if you're playing against like a pretty solid regular and you're where I would be playing like 500 zoom, that type of stuff, and I want to be my I want to have my range a bit more balanced, then this is a pretty nice hand that we can actually check on the turn here. But yeah, so I just decided to bet here. So yeah, I'm just checking back. This turn check makes sense here. Yeah. So I mean, I bet and then he folded, I think. Yeah, the beginning of the session is pretty action-packed, so it's going to be nice. Like if I'm thinking about if I'm thinking about like balancing my range, or having like strong hands into my checking range there, and not just be check raising a hand like I don't know, like 9-10 a spade, for example, and just check folding the turn. I mean, you need to have some hands that you can check raise flop, check call turn, or check raise flop, check raise turn, right? So also, I think people are pretty face up once they check raise check turn. Like there's not that much like double check raising going on. So I'm just saying that like if I wanted my range to be a bit more balanced, I would choose to bet my better 8x. So basically if I had like if I decided to check raise a hand like ace 8, for example, then I dominate a lot of like his 8-9 8-7 suited, if he has those, or 10-8 suited, because he seems like a quite loose passive guy. Yeah, so basically like if I ever want to balance my range, something like that would be a pretty nice candidate. I mean, we block the straight, also we block some I mean, we have a really strong hand. I do think because this guy like has a high went to showdown, he doesn't really 3-bet pre-flop, so basically he's gonna have hands like tens, jacks, pocket nines that he can start hero calling with. So then I would definitely river jam myself. Also, I don't expect this guy to be bluffing a whole lot, so I would rather yeah, so I would rather I think he's gonna make more mistakes by calling too wide, right? Like a hand like pocket nines, pocket tens, than just turning hands into a bluff. So I would rather shove it myself and expect more calls, more mistake calls, if you can put it this way, than like him bluffing, if that makes sense. In theory, on 8x turn or any pair turn, we should check a lot in general. And I mean, the thing is that like here, like it would still bet pretty big. I mean, it doesn't have like we still have full losses. We did a simulation yesterday, like where we check raise the flop and then the board pair on the turn, and like it was still like betting big, you know, because I mean we still have some draws. Like there's still some hands that like it was not going like 2x pot, but it was something going like pot size bet or just under, you know, like it was using the big size and not the smaller size. If the turn was like, I mean, because we still have some bluffs here and we still have some good hands. Now, if the turn was like, I don't know, like a 10 of heart, where a lot of your draws got there, right? Because we're check raising some, or yeah, I mean, we're check raising a lot of flush draws. So when the flush gets there on the turn, I mean, you can like, Pio likes to block bet quite a lot because I mean, like now, what are you bluffing, right? So like your range is pretty much value heavy, so we size a bit down. But here, when the board pairs, it's still like, yes, maybe we're not gonna be betting like crazy, but when we do, we're gonna mostly use a biggish sizing, if that makes sense. All right, here we call the 3-bet out of position. This guy is fairly active pre-flop, so yeah, so he's threading pretty wide. So basically, guys, out of position, there's a lot of people that are making the mistake of flatting too wide. So like we want to keep our range pretty tight and strong, and we want to 4-bet quite aggressively. And also, once we actually call the 4-bet, I mean the 3-bet out of position, there's not that much check calling going on the flop. Like especially like on this board, like it would check raise pretty aggressively versus a full range c-bet. So hands like this, even hands, I mean, if we have ace king, ace queen, those type of hands are looking to check raise a lot of the time. So like I said, like it's not, and I mentioned that in yesterday's group coaching as well, it's not because we're actually check raising some mergy type of hands that we're looking to always bet the turn and shove the river. So like we're gonna have to use some hands like that we're gonna check raise, check call the turn, and then check raise, check shove the turn as well. So always keep that in mind. So this combo, I decided to check raise. We don't need to check raise super big. Something like 50% is fine. So, okay, on the turn, I mean, a lot of our bluffs get there. So like we're at, like I mentioned, in the previous hand, we're just gonna use a small sizing. Usually, even if the turn was not a flush, Pio likes to use a small block bet on the turn because the stack to pot ratio is so there's 50 big blinds, right? And there's about like, so it's 1.5 SPR. So basically like we don't need to start bombing the turn. Like we don't need to bet like 35 or like 38. So basically what we do is that we bet a polarized range, but we can still bet small because the stack to pot ratio is quite small. So basically like even if the turn was like the 3 of, I don't know, like the 6 of heart, for example, if I had like an ace jack, or if I had like a strong hand or a bluff, I would use the block bet. I would use the block bet sizing. Now, since that the flush actually got there, I mean, I'm just going to use the block bet anyway, because like a lot of our bluffs got there. So I actually bet the turn, and then he folded. Yeah. So yeah, so I think, I mean, this is pretty much it. Now there's going to be 2 spots where that are pretty interesting and that are pretty big. They're both coming up at the top. So that the first one, let's take a look at the 4-5 of clubs. So basically what happens is that he opens, I 3-bet, and he calls. This is a spot where I'm going to range c-bet here. So I mean, pretty obvious, like 1/3 pot full range. He's gonna call. Now on the turn ace, whenever like this is like I check this hand like in Pio after. Like if we were small blind versus button, on like our range is a bit different than big blind. So basically on that turn, that would be a very, very, very good turn for us, because if our range in the small blind is like 18%, it contains all the suited ace-x. So on the flop, we would see bet our entire range. We would see bet all of our ace-x, and villain would actually fold a lot of his ace-x on the flop. So he would fold hands like ace-5 of heart, ace-7 of heart, like ace-7 of club, that type of stuff, which we all see bet. So like we get to the turn with like about double the amount of top pair that he has. So what when that happens is that we use a really aggressive strategy, and we use a block bet sizing. So we use a really small sizing, and we can block bet super aggressively. Like Pio usually block bet something like 70 to 80%. In this case, it's a bit different. Like once I simmed this, Pio was actually using the block bet sizing and as well like a bigger size. And I think that's because we have less ace-x in our range when through betting from the big line. Because I mean, all the ace-7, ace-6 suited, ace-8 suited, ace-9 suited are not like 100% three bet frequency now. Even hand like ace-10 off, ace-jack off that we always three bet in the small blind versus button, we don't as well. So that turn is still good for us, but it's not as good as if we were in the small blind versus button. So basically, what I did here is I actually use a block bet strategy. I think it's still quite efficient in the sense that like villains needs to do a lot of defending. Also, what we can see is that even if I were using the bigger sizing, Pio likes to turn some bottom pairs into a bluff on the turn. I mean, with a hand like 4-5, we block some like pocket fours. We don't really block ace-5 suited because the ace of club is I mean, we have the 4-5 club, so we don't like, we only block like basically like pocket fours, which is not great. So basically I decided to bet here. I still think it's a decent bet. I mean, we can make fold like a hand like pocket tens. We can make fold a hand like 9x for sure. So yeah. So I went ahead and block bet. And then he calls, and then on the river, that's where it gets interesting. I was like he's still gonna have hands like king, queen, king, jack, king 10 that he's gonna call with. I mean, he's obviously gonna have some ace-x, but I decided to shove here, and like once I simmed this, like I'm not happy. Like after playing this hand, like I was not really happy about this shove, to be honest. I think yeah. I think like here, like Pio checks 4-5. I mean, it still wins against some like Jack 10 of like diamonds, that type of stuff, right? So I mean, we win like I don't know, like 10% of the time. I don't think he's ever gonna bluff us our hand. So yeah. So basically, I think it's just a check on the river. Here, I decided to jam. He tanked a long time, and then. I think on the flop versus the 1/3, like people are like people need to defend hands like pocket sixes, right? I think that will get folded. Like if they're making mistakes, I think it's in like the pocket pair type of part of their range. Now, like I think 9x is still calling the turn. Is still calling the flop, but on the turn, like I expect a lot of fold equity. Like I expect like I'm not even sure like if they call like a 9 on the turn, to be honest. Like in my opinion they don't, but I mean some of the better guys could potentially do it, but yeah. So I decided to shove. He tank, and then he actually folded, so which is great. Like there's stacks flying everywhere, guys. Like I told you, it's a pretty action-packed. So yeah, so let's just rewind here. Um, all right, so this hand, there's a limper here. This guy, don't really have sample on him. E4X here. We could call, we could 3-bet, we could do both. I think that's fine. I decided this time to 3-bet. I don't also have like a really big sample on the fish. Like if I had a bit more information, like I wouldn't mind calling a bit more, you know, like, and then I know like if I make a really like a strong hand, I'm going to be able to get a lot of money from him, but I don't even have information on him. So like I would rather take the pot down. There's already like 6.5 big blinds. In terms of sizing, I could potentially go a bit bigger. So I could potentially go something like 13.5 or something. Now he calls, board is 773. It's a spot where we have a range advantage. So like we're gonna 3-bet like I mean all the, like pocket eights plus. I mean all like the flush draws. We're gonna have a really strong hand, so really strong range. Also on these type of board where it's like 10 high and lower, like Pio really likes to size up. So like you could see like Pio really preferring like a half pot sizing here. And like the tighter the ranges are, the tighter the ranges are, the bigger like the flop sizing gets. So like if you would take, for example, you would sim a big blind, like a 5 or 6% big blind 3-bet versus an under the gun. You would see that like on like, I don't know, like 4-4-5, like it would just bet its entire range for like 75 or 80% pot or even bigger. Just because the ranges are super tight, there's not that much overfolding going on, so it just starts to size up. Now I think going like 75% is way too big here. Also, by betting super big, we actually make villain strategy a lot simpler. So there's a lot of guys like at 500 zoom at the moment that are like 3-betting, and then they're c-betting like 75% on super dry boards. But the thing is that like they're making my strategy a lot simpler. Like we should fold a lot, right? Because we're getting a bad price. We should raise a bit more on the really draw heavy board, but it just makes our life way easier. Like yes, it might be annoying because I mean he bets super big. I'm sure you guys start to see those at the lower stakes because it's been happening also at 200. So yeah, I mean it just makes our life super easy. So we want to find like the right sizing that puts us like still the medium part of his range into a tough spot, but like we still want to deny some equity. So we're out of position. The board is going to change a lot on the turn. The equities are not as stable. So basically our range wants to size up, and I would just bet range here for a half pot size. Also, he snap calls. So like that makes me like if you really had like a really strong hand, you would think about it. But yeah, I mean like on the turn here, snap call. So the turn is a king. In general, the turn king is always good for our range. So we're betting turn kings really aggressively, usually between like something like 60 to 70% of the time, and mostly using a big sizing. Now that the flush got there, a lot of our bluffs actually improve. And also, villain's gonna have a decent amount of flushes. So basically, when the turn flush gets there, and it's a relevant card, like our range likes to size down. So basically, what I would be using is that I would be using block bet strategy on this turn, and I can still bet hands like pocket aces with a spade. I can still bet a hand like I mean ace king. Otherwise, if we just bet pretty big on the turn, and we're just polarizing ourselves to like a really strong hand to a flush or trips or better. So here I decided to bet this combo. I kind of like this combo specifically because on that king, yes, he's gonna have flushes, but he won't have that many king X, because the king X he's gonna float with are gonna be maybe king jack of spade, king jack of clubs, and king queen of spade of clubs, basically, and we block both of those. So when betting there, I kind of like it because I mean, yes, he's gonna have, obviously he's gonna have flushes, but we still need to have some bluffs in the sense that like here. I'm not preventing really ace jack off, so then I would use a hand like ace queen off with the ace of spade for sure. And then we also need some, I mean, sometime also of a bit non-natural bluff, and I think this fits well into this category. Yep. So I use the block bet. He calls again. Now on the river here, yes, again, he's going to have some flushes. I'm going to have ace queen with the ace of spade as a bluff. Also, I think he's still going to call on the turn like hands like pocket eights, pocket nines with a spade, maybe a hand like pocket sixes with a spade. So I decided to actually shove here. Yes, we're going to have some hands like ace queen off with the ace of spade. But other than that, like I kind of like this combo also blocking some king X. So I went ahead and shoved. So yeah, I mean, on the like if it was any other turn, so basically if it was like a 3-4 spade turn, then I would not use this combo because I mean we block his folding range, right? But when the king gets there, some of our bluff like king queen ace king actually gets there, and we block the king queen suited combos that he actually called the flop with, which is good. So if the turn is like a deuce of spade, I would not have bluffed this specific combo as we block some of his folds. But then on the king turn, I don't mind bluffing the turn here. But yes, yeah, I mean Payo, like I checked this spot again, and Payo is mixing like between all. It's still shoving some king queen of king queen of clubs, and then other as well. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean it's pretty close, to be honest. Like it's pretty close. I decided to go ahead with it. I mean we're gonna have some ace queen, and then yeah, I mean if it was not the eight, the king of spade, then I would definitely just check fold this. But here I think it's fine, and then we can still make hands fold like pocket eights, pocket nines, even hands like pocket sixes if he has that with a spade. Those are all calling the turn, and then especially versus the small sizing. Yeah. So he actually folded, which is great, but yeah. Okay, so we opened button, big blind, 3-bet. We call. Yes. So he bets pot here. Like also like this is exactly like what's starting to happen now. Like people start just bombing flop. The thing is that like once he bombs, like you just have a super easy fold with like this is pretty much like the worst hand I would call there, like to be honest. But it's okay. Like the thing is that like if you still call like 10-9 of club, 10-9 of spade, for example, then I mean you're making super big mistakes. Like a lot of the people that are like over bet c-betting the flop, you know, like they overbet as a c-bet on the flop on like a 9-8-4 flush or something like that. It's like they're making your life easy, but the thing is that you need to fold, and sometimes you need to fold bottom pair and then that like or second pair without backdoor flush draw. But if you make the mistake of calling too wide versus that strategy, then I mean you're making a really big mistake because you're putting in money into the pot, and then the pot is super big and you have like a pretty weak hand. So like this has been happening for a while now, but the thing is that like we just kind of thank him because he makes our life pretty easy. So basically another interesting spot here, like in this hand, I'm gonna teach you how to 3-bet, flop a set, and then getting it in with 100% equity. So yeah. So this guy opens. He's a pretty wide and aggro regular. So we 3-bet pocket eights. I would not 3-bet that versus every player. So he calls. Okay, so pretty good board for us. You should only call there with hands like king queen suited, ace queen suited. So like, so yeah, I mean we have pocket eights. The 3 is irrelevant as he shouldn't have any sets. So I mean we're gonna see bet this pretty aggressively. So I'm just gonna see bet my entire range here. 1/3 pot. He's gonna call. Okay, so like in general, like if you want to slow play, sometimes like hands like top set, middle set get slow played. A lot of the times, bottom set is always getting fast played, but we never have pocket 3s here. Also, like if you're playing against like a weaker player, like I would never check that. If you're thinking about if you're playing against a super solid regular and then you want to be a bit more balanced, I mean, you can sometimes check that back. But the thing is that on the king turn, this is a really, really good turn again for our range. So basically, like, again, we would want to bet that pretty aggressively. So that means that, like, if we bet super aggressively on a specific turn, that means that we need to bet our nuts as well very aggressively. If there's a turn that we want to check quite a lot, that means that we need to check our strong hands quite often as well. So in this spot, basically, since I'm going to be barreling this turn king super aggressively, I'm basically never, ever, ever going to slow play my pocket eights here. So yeah, and then once we bet, we don't like we use a polarized range, so we're gonna bet big. There's 2 flush draws. Yeah, I could even size up a bit. To be honest, I went ahead and it chose 75%, but we could go ahead and bet a bit more. But I think that's fine as long as you bet big and you have the right mindset. And then he snap shove, or not snap, but he shoved. And then we have 100% equity, which is amazing. Yeah, okay. So in this spot, we open in middle position, big blind, who's a huge nit, calls. He's overfolding versus c-bets. So basically, like, I'm going to c-bet my entire range here. Once he calls, I think his range going to be a bit too strong. So I'm not going to do that much bluffing. I mean, this hand in particular is super bad. So basically, yeah, so I mean, I'm just looking to check it down now. So here we check back. He bets. So this guy bets small. Yeah, now here, this guy is a really, really, really big nit. I mean, he's playing 22-17. I have 28K hands on him, and like his 1-1 soft flop is 44. Whenever he's betting, you just have to fold. To be honest, like it's pretty much that. Now versus like an okay regular, like he's gonna have hands like Jack 9. He's gonna have hand like Ace Jack. He's gonna have hand like Queen Jack. That he can potentially start to turn, or a hand like pocket deuces with a club that he can start turning into a bluff on the river. But especially this guy, I don't think he's ever bluffing here, or especially once he starts sizing down. I think this is like this guy is just really bad, and we just need to overfold versus him. Also, like once he start betting small, like we cannot be calling wide here, because like his range is going to be value heavy. So basically what's going to happen is that we either fold or we either raise more as a bluff. So basically saying I got a okay hand. Like, I mean, if you're if it kind of makes sense, right? So basically, like whenever that happens and they bet small, like we don't do too much calling because he's saying he's got an okay hand, not a great hand, but an okay hand. So what we want to do is overfold a bit, and then we want to be raising a bit as well. So yeah, so I think it's a fold here versus this nit against like another guy. Like we should be calling there. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Good luck, guys.